Okay, folks, I do believe we are live. Is that correct? All right. So let's go ahead and get started with our pre-meeting. This evening, we will be covering the CIP review. Mr. Roberts?
All right, I think Patty's going to be, oh, there it is, look at this. She's already running the wheel already. So if you recall back in, let's see, you got that one going? All the screens working in front of you, except for mine and Lance? If you recall, we talked about the CIP a little bit back on our budget planning workshop. And out of that direction that I received from the board was go back and do a little more work to see if we can't dial this thing in and get it a little more manageable for this fiscal year budget. And I think what you'll see before you is the work that Jackie and Patty and I worked on. I'm not going to go read through all 50, I think it's 57 projects, $205 million worth of capital improvements over the, and I'm rounding, it's a little bit more than 205 million, but 205 million over the life of the CIP. I will promise you, numbers that you see in outer years, there's no way those numbers are going to be correct. I couldn't tell you what a project's going to cost in FY 27 or 26 or 25, let alone 24. So these are best estimates on today's dollars. These numbers will change, I promise you, in outer years. But what you see highlighted in front of me in yellow are actual projects that have changed since the last time you saw this at the end of February. And what we've done here, and I'll kind of go through those projects and hone in on those projects. All these projects you'll see, you've probably already seen many times, and you'll see in many more years to come. You know, some of these projects take 20 years to come to fruition sometimes. So if it's okay, Mayor, I'll just sort of focus on the ones that are highlighted in yellow and just kind of tell you what has changed in those projects. And this has kind of helped us get to something that we can bite off. The other direction I heard from the board at that time, which may change tonight, was that the sort of consensus at the time was to look at a actual, and Jackie's going to talk a little bit about this, a referendum November of 23 versus November of 22. If the board decides they want to do a November 22 referendum, we'd have to get jumping real quick because there would be board action that need to take place sometime at one of the June meetings. And Jackie probably has, I'm sure, a calendar that she would show the board again of kind of what a rough calendar would look like if we were to go November 22. Same thing with November 23, you're just pushing that calendar back. We'd still need to do action sometime in June if we were to do that, assuming we stick with that sort of calendar. But this is all based on looking at a referendum November 23. So to hop in on those projects, the first one, Berry Park restroom addition and parking lot. We had some consensus from the board that we want to do the bathroom at the top of the hill, the parking lot at the top of the hill. Everyone's familiar with this project is. What's really changed in this project, the actual cost estimate has gone up by roughly $250K since the last time you saw this. That's the only change here. Hopping to Farrelltown Parkway, the price is still the change, but with where we are with the timing of that project, there are more dollars in the outer year FY24 than it was before. There were sort of split a little bit differently in 23 and 24, but more dollars put in the outer year based on where we are with that project right now. Siegel should be Siegel McCord to NC 73, not McCoy, because that'd be a long stretch from McCoy over to 73. That may be $1 billion instead of what it is now if we were going that far. So that should change. And the big difference there is we split the last 2 years. It was originally 1.5 and 23. Where you are with timing on that project, it's split 750 in 23 and 24, but the dollar amount's still the same. Huntington Green sidewalk, Same thing, there was roughly 1.9 million some dollars in '23. There's no way we'll get to that project. That's a federal, part of that is federal funded and what's going on with that project. So most of that money shifted into FY '24. If you go down to Holbrook Park expansion, the difference there is potentially looking at land in FY '24, but any type of development will be pushed out into future years. So basically that 1.2 million, I think used to be in '25, and that was pushed on out to a future year. The hit to North Mac Park Greenway, we originally had, I think, 1.5, actually, I'm sorry, we had 750, I think, in the FY '23, and then 750 in '24. We pushed those two out by 1 year. You know, we're still doing the planning phases on that project, continuing to meet with the neighborhood. So we need to get that project in order before we start down the path of any type of construction, right away, et cetera, that may be needed. Town Hall, that project was pushed. We are working to close on some additional land behind Town Hall here. Hope to close by April 25th. Once we get that land in play, then we'll have some more discussions on what we do with that project. But ultimately, that project would have to be some type of installment financing or some type of bond project. And so we really have had no discussion. This was just pushed out to FY '25 until we could get that land in place and have some more discussion. Fire Station 5, you've probably heard Chief Tottoli talk about Fire Station 5. That's just to get the land in '25, and then any future development for a building will be pushed out to a future year. A lot of these projects that you see pushed out in the future year, the reason for that is ultimately there's no way we can fund these projects without some type of future bond. All the rest of the projects, pretty much Bradford Park, the Rec Center, Church Street realignment to Walters, Beatty's Ford Neck Road, Holbrook Road between 115 and Central. Any of those projects we haven't spent any dollars on got pushed out to a future year. The only way we can afford those projects, like I said, is we have to look at doing some type of future bond to pay for those or kick the can down further. What we've done here is saying we're kicking the can out until we decide to do some type of referendum to be able to pay for these, bond to be able to pay for these. So that's how we were able to be able to make the finances work on the CIP and other things that we've got going on. And then if you look at parkland acquisition, the same thing, that was pushed out to future year. Fire Station 2 will just be buying land. McCoy and Hambright, we're just finishing, you see prior year dollars. We're just finishing out design. McCoy and Michael Wayne finishing out design. And then Walters, Huntsville Concord Road. That one, was that the project, Jackie, that we used to fund the two other projects, Patty? So any future development on those got kicked out to a future year. So everything you see highlighted in yellow, again, are the changes that we made since the last time you've seen that. And that was all based on a November 23 referendum and trying to hold a tax rate what it is now and push any projects that basically we spent no money on out to a future year. I think that's sort of the rationale behind it. Patty, Jackie, anything to add to that? I know you want to talk bond referendum for sure.
I would say that future column of 82 million, I ask you to think about if there's projects in there that you feel strongly about, yeah, you'd want to do the bond referendum earlier. I would encourage you, I'm sorry, can we go back for just a minute to the Excel document, Patty? I think we ought to look at the forecast. When you looked at the forecast, the version of the forecast we talked about late February, early March at our workshop, I think it increased the tax rate quite a bit. And fund balance was just woefully low, much, much lower than you'd ever want to take it. Cumulative fund balance, row 35 now, at $30 million. That's total fund balance. So that includes Powell bill and stormwater and all your, that would take it, for quite frankly, lower than your policy, but at 51% of revenues, that row 36, that's appreciably better than the, I think it was single digit when we talked about it in February. I would think this would be more palatable. Patty, will you scoot down just a little bit and show tax rate implications? So, row 51, tax rate. So, you're going to hear from the assessor tonight. The reval is effective for FY '24. Row 49, reval percentage 12%. I got no insider information on that. I don't think that number's right. I don't know what it's going to be. I think a smarter way to look at what you think the taxes is going to be is row 55. If you're generating in FY '23 about $25 million in taxes, the amount of taxes that taxpayers would be asked to pay the next year of $26 million, you're going to have some natural growth in the system, so that's a little bit more realistic. But if you look at row 55, I mean, that's still got taxes going up an appreciable amount to fund the level of capital that we just talked about. So if you're really missing any of those projects that we had in that future column, I would say that would motivate you to do the bond referendum earlier. I'm happy to go to the PowerPoint that was the referendum, but honestly, yes, sir.
Just a quick question on fiscal year '24 plan. Is there a reason why you dropped it down to 22 for that particular year?
No. If you drop it to 22, you're still generating a little over $1 million more in taxes than you did the prior year. But my favorite thing about this spreadsheet is right here on the fly. You can say, Patty, change that back to 24 and see the amount of taxes generated and what impact that has on fund balance. I'm happy if you do that. You can make it 24. You can make it 20
Patty,
cents.
change it back to 24. I just want to see it. Just that cell you have highlighted.
So yeah, you're generating 28 million in taxes instead of, I think it was 26 before. And
just
so
like
the
it
impact
consistent.
on fund balance is 2.4 million. I'm sure right now, I think right now we have whatever you put the tax rate in '24, it's going to pull to the future years, but you're absolutely more than happy to change that every year if you want to. '24 one year, '23 the next, '26 the one year after. The beauty of this document is for you to see what the impact is if you raise or lower the tax rate to some other number. I'm not super motivated to go back to that the PowerPoint because honestly, there's no changes in that from the last time we discussed it. You got to be careful about thinking about when you want to do a referendum. What Anthony said is absolutely true. We asked bond counsel in 2018, and I mean, don't keep stuff forever, so I have a calendar that I'm happy for you to see, that bond counsel says there is board action that needs to start in the month of June if you intend to do a referendum in the November ballot. Think about that looking backwards. We have to notify the county in August so they can print ballots in time for early voting on exactly what the wording is in the bond language. So for you to feel good about, you have to take action to approve how bond questions are worded. The first part of that, you would need to start taking action in June. And today is April 18th. There's a lot of things that you need to talk about and feel good about and pass for us to have a referendum on the November ballot. I'm happy to display for you that Word document that says what needs to happen at the first meeting in June, and then the July meetings, and then the August meetings to be on the ballot. But think about when you want to. To me, I would take you exactly back to that last column that's a future referendum. Fire Station 2 is a future, the funding for that building, not the land, but the building is a future referendum. Please, please, there are 2 fire stations in this list, Station 5 and Station 2. Because we believe the county would, the ETJ would primarily be largely served by Station 5, we predict, a strict version or interpretation of this document is we get a bargain on Station 5 that we wouldn't necessarily get in Station 2. That's of course not true. We're just saying our ultimate cost of $3.1 million in Station 5 would be appreciably less if we're going to use county funds for a portion of that. So the difference in pricing on Station 2 and 5, you're not going to get one appreciably cheaper than the other. It's just you might have an offset of some of the funding sources for Station 5. Please study this list. I'll bet there's a project or two on here you think, I don't know why they got that on the list, we should take it off. I'd never find that one. If that's how you feel, let's take it off the list. There is a lot of projects to be funded on this list, and some of these projects we need to not be working on if we're not going to fund them. I'm Stephen, Kevin, anybody?
So I guess my question to you is, would you like to have a conversation around 22 versus 23 this evening? Or would you rather go back and dive into this project list and then come back and have that conversation?
So we can do both. What I will tell you, Mayor, is this, what you see here in front of you, unless we get some clear direction from the board, is what you'll see come down the pike to the manager's recommendation. And the reason for that, these projects, most of these projects, you see, we've already spent money on, so I'm still rolling down that path of those projects. But if there's a project, you say, stop it in its tracks, we're not doing any more on that, then yes, I need to hear that, because we're continuing down the path of projects we spent money on, but ones we haven't. As I said, I pushed out to make the finances work for all the different things that we've got going on.
Okay. Commissioner Purty?
Yeah, I keep hearing that term, kicking the can down the street or down the path, and myself, the longer we kick that can, the higher the material is going to cost, the price of construction is going to cost, the price of property is going up, as we know. And me at 70 years old, I already kicked the can too many times, so I'm at the end of my kicking can days, and I'd like to see something get done. If we can get a referendum, I'm for a referendum to have a bond.
Commissioner Kidwell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, during the, one of the retreats we talked about, I think it was in here, it was brought up that if we do a referendum, that names need to be tied to it from this board, whether you support it or not. Really like that. But I think it's not a matter of whether we do it in 22, 23, or whatever, that, you know, this board needs to choose. You want to make it a political issue and do it during an election year, or do it this year. Either way, I do agree that your names need to be tied to it, whether you support the referendum, where that money's going, and if there's going to be an end date. You know, if we raise the taxes 2 cents for whatever that is, when's that 2 cents going to come off of the tax rate? And make that very public.
I think the other piece that the board's going to need to consider too is that in 23, most likely, the county's also going to have bond package on the ballot. And that's something to take into consideration as well, CMS school bonds, et cetera. Commissioner Munger?
Jackie, I'm going to put you on the spot here. If we financed $50 million and the interest rate changed by 0.25%, you have a rough idea how much that would cost us if it went up?
Our financial advisor is Davenport & Company. They do this for a living and exclusively debt issues. And I'm happy to forward you their 41-page document. They have 2 pages I think are critical. I asked them to assume that I would issue $66 million in debt. I would do that in 2 or 3 tranches, I can't remember, over the course of roughly either 2 tranches in 2 years or 3 tranches in over the course of 3 years in the next 5 years. Their estimate of what impact that would have on the tax rate is a high of 4.71 cents and a low of 3.15 cents. So I would round that and say issuing roughly $66 million in debt could be done for as cheaply as 3 to 5 cents on the tax rate.
That's if we issued it now. If we waited a year from now and interest rates went up, let's just say 0.5%, any idea what that would cost?
No, no. Commissioner Phillips, can I interrupt you before you start? I apologize. You asked me ballpark how much debt has the town had issued, and I've still not answered that question. However, I looked at from 2007 to present, and we have had outstanding at one time as little as 35 million in debt and as much as 49 million in debt. That's what we have done historically. I have a long, tiny print spreadsheet that I'm just itching for you to look at, and I'll pull it up if you want to see it. But the Local Government Commission prepares statistics for all municipalities, how much debt of what type of they got outstanding. And I think if you're curious about how much is the most and least we've had outstanding in the last, say, 15 years, I would encourage you to take a look at, oh my gosh, what are other entities doing? I'm happy to display it. The print is incredibly small. I'm happy to discuss it with you, but I appreciate your patience about me not answering that question.
How much bond money do we still have from previous situations?
So in 2012, voters approved, was it 20 or 30 million in debt, Patty? All of that has been issued. We have none that's authorized and not yet issued. We don't have any debt that's available to us without going back to the voters, with the possible exception of installment financing. Installment financing is comparable to a mortgage. If you do an installment financing, you have to have a public hearing, but that's not a vote of the taxpayers, of the citizens.
You're saying, Jackie, all of our bond dollars have been issued.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
They
I'm
haven't
saying-
been spent, but they've been issued.
How much have we not spent from that 2012 bond?
Oh, my goodness, I just looked at that before I walked in here. Unspent neighborhood, 12 million.
So 12 million out of 30 million?
Yeah, 12 million, it's issued and it's on our books right now and dedicated to projects. So those financial statements Patty sent out Thursday, you have already adopted, I'm dedicating this much to this project and this much to the other. So you've already said how you're going to spend that money, but still unspent right now, ballpark 12, 13 million.
And those are like Main Street, Gilead, those type projects.
Yeah, and you should,
Okay.
and I think you'll probably see I think what Patty sent out the financials, today? You should see for those projects, percentage spent, what's left, et cetera, for Gilead, for Maine, et cetera, and you can see how much dollars are left for each one of those.
Those monthly financials also show you from previous issues how much we have that's unspent on those as well. If you want to sit down in my office and let me go through the monthly financials with you, I'll be glad to do that.
I would just, I think key is, if you're thinking if you're thinking November 2022, we really need to know like ASAP, just because we've got to get information to you so you can make decisions on, what projects that we're going to bring into that, how do we define those, different things like that. Right now, we're based on the feedback from previous, we are thinking November 23, but we can shift and change as needed.
Commissioner Boone?
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. November 22, I think we're really pushing the envelope pretty quickly. We've got a lot of things to do in a short time. We really don't want to mess this up. So I would suggest we possibly look at November 23, 24. We haven't even gone down this list and pared some of these things down. There's one that jumps out pretty quickly at me, and that's Dave Kinney Farm Road. And I'm to suggest, Dan, I think that needs to come off the list. Thank you.
I'm right there, I wrote that down, but we hadn't gotten there yet. Because that's a lot of money to spend on a project where you literally have the entire neighborhood saying, we don't want this.
That's true, Commissioner, and what I'm saying is that if we're going to borrow $60 million, why isn't it 48? And this is another $2 million off of that project. So let's kind of give us a couple days to look through this list.
So a couple of reminders. So we plan to meet a week from today to make some final ins and outs related to budget. The 2 weeks from today, the town manager will make his presentation of the budget. So 524, if there are specifics on this list, you just want to go ahead and say take off. So when you make decisions on the 25th about what should be in or should be out, there will be, putting the manager's recommended budget together does not happen in an hour or so. So as early as you want to make changes would be helpful to me and Patty so we can go ahead and start putting the entire document together. I encourage you to do so.
Okay. Commissioner Munger?
Sure. So Jackie, I went ahead and just a quick calculator on the half percent interest change. On 66 million, I picked 3.5% to start, which is hopefully in the ballpark of where we might be right now. And that would be $40.7 million in interest charges. If we went to 4%, that's $47.4 million in interest. So that's $6.7 million we lose by waiting for a year, assuming interest rate goes up by 1% or 0.5%. Not to mention the cost of goods that will occur, the change in that from here to a year later. We're throwing away money by waiting on this. That's made my strong opinion. We all said, we know these roads need improvement. It's not going away. We have to do things, and we have to be good stewards of money. And we're talking between interest and the amount of the inflation on the services that will be provided, it's like $10 million. $10 million. That's a lot of money. We should be acting now. That would be my opinion.
Mr. Roberts?
Basically, we just need to hear from the board. If there's individual projects like the David Kinney Farm Road, what we may want to do is kind of, obviously, we can tell you how much we spent to date. I'm just picking on that project. We can tell you how much we spent to date. I'm sure Stephen and Kevin can tell you where we are in that process. Because if that's a project that's just, I'm going to pick on that one, but if that's something we want to put on the shelf, do you want to get it to a state where you put it on the shelf and do no further? Or do you just kill it altogether and then the money that you spend on that project, you might as well just throw it in the trash can? So that's something we want to think about on individual projects. You may want to get it through design, put it on the shelf to see what happens with 73 if that's what you want to do. So if there are individual projects you want to talk about, I would probably make sure we talk through those things and see where do we go.
In response to David Kinney, that project has been on our CIP since before 2011. And I remember not too long ago where we had a meeting with the HOAs in there. And I know that there's a lot of folks in there that do not want this project to happen. But I also know that when 73 gets widened, that's going to be the ability for those neighborhoods to get in and out and be connected. So I'm just saying be cautious with that one, because that one is, while again, I know that there's a lot of folks that don't want it to happen because they're so used to the way it currently is, they're not going to be able to move around once that widening happens. And I know that the board has always wanted to be proactive rather than reactive. And I'd hate for us to be pulling something off the shelf once 73 gets widened. And then they come asking, well, we can't get in and out of our neighborhood. So just be cautious with that one. Commissioner Kidwell?
Yeah, I mean, have we heard any more news on 73? I mean, it was supposed to happen 2 years ago, then they pushed it out for another 4 years. I mean, we're probably looking at another 6 years down the road based off the financials of NCDOT, right?
What's Stephen, the current dates, I think? I know they're broken and separate, but I think construction 26, 27 on most of those. I don't have the list in front of me, but I'm just guessing FY 26, FY 27 on most of those segments.
Yeah, we're expecting an update later this year on a lot of the DOT projects. They're relooking at financials, so later this year. They're looking to update that. Is there a particular part of 73 looking for? Because there's various dates. The reason why I asked that, different sections have different dates on there.
Yeah.
Lincoln County over, looks like FY '26 is the latest date we have. Again, these are all subject to change as they go back through the reprioritization process. And I would expect them to get pushed out, be my guess.
Okay, thank you.
So Mayor, what you see before you is unless something changes or some new direction, this is what you'll see. The manager's recommended budget sort of funded. And then we'll talk further. Unless I hear otherwise, we'll start to get our stuff together for a November 23 referendum. And we'll have lots of discussion on that with the board. Unless we, like I say, move early, but that would have to be June.
So I would say for this board to review these projects, be ready to come back on next Monday when we have our budget workshop, and let's nail down 22 or 23 for a bond referendum. Does that sound good to everyone? All right. All right. Do you have anything else?
Maybe Monday, Jackie, do you want to just kind of tell them maybe the 5 or 6 things we'll be talking about besides just CIP? If you can recall off the top of your head.
I would recommend that we have another discussion about board pay, what amount should be put in the budget. We'll discuss the new positions proposed in the budget. We'll discuss the employee raise percentage recommended in the budget. We'll discuss funding for the external agencies and CIP.
Okay.
And the air filtration system at HFFA. Because it's the most money.
Yeah, so those are the various, what we'll probably try to get as much feedback as possible from you on those 5, 6 topics, however they were.
Okay. All right, folks. It is 5:32, and we will be back here at 6 o'clock for the regular board meeting. Thank you all.